This is Odaat Chat, your instant connection to recovery and community, one day at a time. This podcast may contain strong language, sexual content, and spiritual truth. Listener discretion is advised.
Welcome to another episode of the Odaat Chat. My name is Arlina and I'll be your host. If you haven't yet, don't forget to subscribe on iTunes, or you can get new episodes delivered right to your inbox by signing up for the newsletter at odaatchat.com. If you're new here, this is a podcast where my guests and I talk about how to recover from alcoholism and addiction. We typically spend the first half of the podcast on the backstory, but the magic is really in the solution, which we really try to focus on. I'm looking to uncover the moments of clarity, the revelations, and the tools and practices for healing which lead to long-term recovery. So I can't wait to share the next guest with you, author of the new book, Bottleneck, a Drinking Memoir by Paul Fuhr. But before I do, I just want to share that this episode is sponsored by my free 7-day Connection Cure Challenge, how to overcome isolation and attract your tribe in 7 days. I know what it's like to feel overwhelmed by life and lonely because all I want to do is isolate, but I found a solution that changed my life forever, and I want to share it with you. It's a free online course with a downloadable worksheet. So if you've ever struggled with loneliness and isolation, then you absolutely need to take this challenge and experience the relief that comes from feeling supported and connected. So you can sign up for free at soberlifeschool.com. Okay, so back to the new episode with Paul, who is a tireless advocate of the recovery community. He has written for The Fix, After Party, Clean and Sober, In Recovery, the Literary Review, and the Live Oak Review. And he just published his second book, Bottleneck, a Recovery Memoir. So first, I have to apologize to Paul for not noticing that I neglected to hit record until we were at least 20 minutes into the first conversation, which, by the way, was awesome. So what you hear is really, it's really round two. Anyway, this is a wide-ranging conversation with my new BFF, Paul. He is awesome. I bet he gets that a lot, too, because he is so funny and he's super nice. He laughed at all my stupid jokes, so I have to love him for that. We eventually get to his story, but we also talk about the differences between our recovery groups in San Jose, and he's in Ohio. Let's see. We talk about recovery in the corporate world, coping with a sick parent. We talk about his podcast called Drop the Needle. It's on iTunes and many other places. And, of course, his beautifully written book, which you will absolutely love. I'll leave links to all of this in the show notes. So without further delay, please enjoy this episode with Paul. Well, Paul, welcome to the Odaat Chat Podcast, take 2.
Thank you so much for having me again. Oh my goodness, it's so funny. So I'll just acknowledge this is round 2 because we were about, 30 minutes into our conversation. We were at least 20 minutes in.
Yeah, it was right. When I realized, oh, look at that. We're not recording.
That's like when you go to the grocery store and you realize you don't have your purse or your wallet. It's like,
I've done that.
Yeah, it's a
nightmare.
So I can only imagine the fear you just went through your body. So, thank you for having me, though. So.
Yes, well, listen, thank you so much for joining me today on the podcast.
I know the questions you're going to ask, though, now.
I know, so professional. Yeah. Oh, God. What a nightmare.
No.
Thank you for being so patient.
Absolutely, of course.
We'll still have some fun. Now I know that you're a super nice guy. And we started the podcast talking about how we know so many of the same people.
That is true. And like I said, I don't think it's like 3 degrees of separation. We know people directly, like we know the exact same people. So
yeah. I mean, our online community is pretty tight knit, and I can't wait for all of us. So we should throw a party one of these days and all get together. And
it's very tight knit, and I think very loyal too. I think everybody is just very deeply committed to everybody else's sobriety and place in that community too, which is really exciting and special, I think. So.
Well, and if you think about it, we're all committed to the same mission, which is
it's kind of serious, we're trying to save some lives. You and I are both not anonymous. I'm very out there with my recovery. And because there is this element of, while I think anonymity is important, especially in the beginning for some people, at some point, those of us who have been able to maintain sobriety need to be an example, I think, of, what does recovery look like? I'm a recovered drug addict, alcoholic, and this is what it looks like,
Right. Well, like I said, when I was much more charming in my first round with you, and I said that I'd rather that recovery look like you than me. But I do agree with you. It does. You do need to set an example, because it can't be closed off. It can't be a closed circuit where because others who are struggling out there don't know what we look like. They have no idea.
So. We don't walk around with a target on our backs saying, hey, I'm a recovered alcoholic, because
exactly.
I think we're in a period of time where we're sort of still in transition. People are becoming more public about recovery in general. And so we're still fighting a degree of stigma. But I had a guy tell me within the last 5 years at work, I was like, I said something about in recovery, and he goes, don't tell anybody. And I was like,
seriously?
Yeah, a young guy. Well, young to me, he was like in his 30s. But I was surprised.
Still young, yeah, it's young dude.
It's young, right? Yeah. So I was surprised that he had that, and I thought, the message of recovery really needs to get out there. That it's really okay because everybody's struggling with something.
Well, I work for a company that's 500,000 employees. So I work for a giant bank, and at the location I work at is 10,000 people. It's one of the second largest buildings next to the Pentagon.
What?
So if you think about 10% or 12% of the U.S. population struggles with something, I'm probably just making that number up, but I do think it is that number. You think about there's 1,000 people in that building who are struggling. It's just you're walking around going, somebody's got a hangover here.
Someone's doing coke in the bathroom.
Right. There's got to be somebody. Exactly. It's just the law of averages. So
yeah. Well, it's so funny. I wonder what your sales department is like in a bank, because that's pretty conservative. But I work in a sales department in high tech, and people in sales like to drink a lot. So I remember at the end of quarter at this one company, my boss and the coworkers lined up shots all along the wall all along the wall of my cube, because they didn't know, and they're all taking shots like, fuck all y'all.
That's not, see, in our environment that wouldn't work, but it's funny. They're it's much more supportive of folks who are in recovery, though, because there's a giant support structure for anybody, like, veterans or, and so I think that there's a mental illness component too that's growing. I think that there's folks are very sensitive to it, or they have a lot of support groups. They have a lot of monthly meetings we can attend, that sort of thing. So I think the stigma is breaking down at a much larger corporate America level, I think.
No, I think that's great. I bet in 20 years from now, I think all the work that we're doing to sort of, they say it's attraction, not promotion, but I've been sober a while, so I've been battling over the years about, should I be in a podcast? I wonder if you struggled with this too, because you have Drop the Needle, which is your podcast. We'll totally talk about that.
Sure.
And your book, because you're a fabulous writer.
Well, thanks.
Should we talk about your workaholism? I mean, all the things that you do.
Yeah. I have totally. I've never been charged with being lazy. Somebody's been saying, like, you're doing too little with your life. I think that's a really good way of putting it. No one's actually ever called me a workaholic, though. That's really funny.
Playing.
No. I agree with you.
Oh, okay.
I
live by the law of if you spot it, you got it. So
yeah, I do too much. I definitely do too much. So I do have a full-time job, like I mentioned, at a large bank. So that's a full-time job. It's not just 40 hours and I clock out. It's a job. It's like I have responsibilities. Yeah. I have a podcast which is about music and recovery. It's like NPR is All Songs Considered, but it's for the recovery community. So we recover that. We do that. We record that every other week. And then I write for or have written for almost anything that has the word recovery in it, I think. I've written for In Recovery, Recovery Today. Actually, I haven't written for Recovery Today, but The Fix, After Party, all of those sites, I'm very fortunate to have the opportunity to write for them and continue to write for them. So
what were some of your favorite articles, like on The Fix or After Party?
So I write a number of things like, excuse me, some things like, you got to see now I'm doing round 2, so now I've got to I
know, sorry. The first round
it's fine.
Was so
good. So we have, I've done a number of interviews, a number of essays, and a number of just news articles. And I would say, when I say a number, it's actually in the hundreds.
Oh,
so
really? That's a lot.
It's a grind after a while, because you're doing 2 to 3 news articles for one of these sites per week, and that's a lot. I mean, it becomes 500 words each. I mean, that's
500 words each. I was just about to ask you. That's a lot.
Yeah, the essays for After Party were my favorite, because that was very early into my sobriety. I think that I was in that sweet spot where I had some perspective. I had about a year's sobriety. I had some perspective on what it was like to be sober versus not, but not being sober was still very fresh in my mind. Mm-hmm. So I was able to write a lot of essays about what it was like to be me, like being a sober dad, for example, and have a lot of those sorts of essays. But for The Fix, I would say some of the essays I really enjoyed most was, I did one where I met somebody in the rooms who was going as a favor to find out whether a friend's sister was still alive, because she was addicted to opioids. So we went to, and I'm sure everybody knows, all your listeners know, and everybody, Ohio, where I live, is one of the hardest hit states.
Why is that?
I couldn't tell you that, but I can tell you that it really is true.
Okay.
Especially where I'm actually sitting right now, not literally in this room, but I am up at my parents' place up
in that lovely room.
Yeah, for your listeners, I'm sitting in my old bedroom from when I grew up.
And we're on Skype, so I was like, oh, nice curtains.
The curtains are really throwing you off. There's like a brass bed to my right, and some 1972 in here. But Ohio is it's been ravaged, I mean, is the best adjective I can use, just with painkillers. My sister is a nurse, and she's always telling me about the carfentanil and the fentanyl and, everything. But long story short, I wouldn't say I was invited, but it was brought up, hey, would you want to go with me to this town that's not too far outside Columbus where I live? And so I went to what turned out to be a crack house or crack den, and we were just looking to see if this girl was alive. And I wrote this first person, investigatory piece. And it took a long time to put that together, because I got a lot of different perspectives, but I really feel like that one, I did some good with that one, because I felt like it was giving folks who really don't understand what that epidemic looks like a face. But I'm not, I'm an alcoholic. I don't have but I do know addiction periods. I mean, I think it's all the same at the end of the day.
It is so all the same. There's this old timer that goes to meetings that says it doesn't matter what the problem is. It's what does he say? The solution is simple. The solution is spiritual. And the solution has nothing to do with the problem.
No, and I'm so glad to hear that there are old timers there that do that, because I've been in rooms where they're chase those people out. They'll sit down. They're like, I remember when this just used to be about alcohol. They would just sit there because somebody will tell their story and they're, tears and, I lost my son. I lost this. And they'll get done telling this really heartfelt, wrenching story. And then some old timer has the tenacity or temerity to say, I remember when this just used to be about alcohol. I'm like, how cold could you be?
Asshole.
Yeah, but I mean, I see more of that. But I'm glad to hear that that's more the case for
Yeah, and we were on the first round. I guess that's going to be the theme of the. Sorry for the listeners.
We should tell all your listeners it was really good.
It was so good. Yeah, because we were talking about the comparison between San Jose, California recovery and Ohio recovery. Just some differences, and we were talking about the chips. When
what is this deal where you get 1, 2, 3 a half year, and was it a year, is that you said?
Yeah, you get 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, and then 6 months
a year. And then somewhere along the line, I got sober in 94, and somewhere along the line, they started doing a year and a half. And I was like, that's bullshit. I didn't get that. That's all about me. But now there's like all these different, like you get a chip a month,
Right.
Yeah. Which is very encouraging. Actually, I think I would have liked to have a chip every month.
It's awesome. I mean, it's just like, celebrate. It's like participant awards for kids, you get like these, they go to like a tournament and you get it. You didn't win first place, but you showed up. So
you get a chip. Yeah.
Right. But I did. And I lived on those things. I mean, I'm the type that needed the 7th month or the 8-month chip because, sometimes
because it was hard.
God. Yeah. It was like, I think I told you before, it's like time is so slow in early sobriety. And so it just crawls by. So, the first 30 days felt like a year, so I needed that chip. And that gave me a lot of hope, having that first chip. But 7 months, And the other thing that's different too in the rooms is the celebrating the random times.
The random periods of sobriety, I like to call it.
Yeah, it's like have a length of time they like to celebrate, and somebody stands up and says, I have 891 days. And I'm like, great. Like, what am I supposed to do with that?
It's not a thing. It's not a thing. Listen, if we're all going to stand up and announce how much time we have, we're never going to get to the meeting. What I mean?
And I have almost 5 years, but I couldn't tell you down to the day what I have. I mean, it's just like,
right.
I don't care at that point.
Can I tell you that in San Jose, if you say if you announce your milestone the day before, you will get booed out. You will get people like,
seriously?
Oh yeah. They're very serious about don't claim your time before you have it. Yeah.
Oh my God.
There is no, I have almost.
That's really funny.
Sit down.
I love it. I could sit here and talk about San Jose versus Columbus all day long because I'm thinking I think we have given time out beforehand, but yeah, we will. It's so funny recently.
So I go to, I know, so mean. There's certain things that are different. Like at the beginning of every meeting that I go to in the Valley, they will ask, are there any newcomers in their first 30 days who would like to stand and introduce themselves by their first name only? This is not to embarrass you. This is just so we can get to know you better. Every meeting, right?
Yeah.
And then is anyone celebrating a milestone of recovery? And then are there any visitors? So we go through those first 3 things every meeting.
Right.
Do you guys have that?
Sometimes it depends on the meeting. There are so many different meetings that I've attended. They all have different formats. All I can tell you is that I would say by and large, no, I haven't seen that, but I've seen it in my the one regular meeting I do attend. We do that to a degree, but most people like me hide out in the beginning. They don't want to admit anything. So I always sat there's like 2 circles in this church, annex, and there was like the second circles where I always sat like near the back,
close to the door.
I could literally, so I could just escape, because I don't want anybody knowing my name. I just, those first 30 days, I just wanted to be anonymous as could be, even in that room.
You just needed a minute to get used to the temperature, I suppose.
Yeah, exactly. That's a great way of putting it.
Yep. Yeah. So maybe we should back up a little bit and talk about, we usually start with like, what do you do and stuff. And, you're an amazing writer or slight workaholic, which no judgment here. So tell me a little bit about your family of origin, because I feel like that really kind of sets the stage for the rest of the story, don't you think?
Yeah. So, it's fitting that I'm sitting in this room with these awful curtains. So I can
amazing curtains.
Yeah. Because that'll give you some context. So
your mom is not going to listen to this, is she?
Probably will. She's probably like listening to it right now.
Damn it. Sorry, Mom. We're just super judgy.
Listen to me recording.
We're just so judgy.
A single tear going down her cheek. No. So my parents are, I grew up in a very normal family unit. I have a sister who's 5 years younger. My parents have been together for over 40 years.
Wow.
And they've, just a very loving environment. I was going to tell you that I had a very normal existence, but I don't think I did in a lot of ways because my parents owned the company that made crash test dummies.
That's so cool.
all of the
wild.
It's such a random thing. It's more random than somebody standing up and
somebody
saying,
had to do it.
91 days of sobriety. It's like, it is random. Yeah, it is. But my parents, they were really busy and always looking the other way. So I could have been a really shitty 15-year-old. I could have been like out there doing all the things that I'm currently afraid my youngest daughter is going to do. She's like, about to turn 3. I'm afraid what she's going to be like when she's 15. But my dad was always traveling all over the world. So he's going to, Korea and, the UK and all this. And so there was not a lot of, the only thing I think that stricture-wise was like I had a 10 o'clock curfew until I was like through high school, which was bizarre.
Wow, that's pretty strict.
Yeah.
Who was there to enforce it?
Well, you know what? I think my mom was smart because I would have I would have turned into. I used to love Star Trek and James Bond. Yeah, I used to love all that stuff. I would have gone from that to just being wrapping a car around a tree or something because I have no control over me. But
control over me.
No. I mean, so it's good that my mom saw that in me and was like, you need to stay here. And I was like, the times that I got out of the house, to like,
escaped.
Yeah, we had a foreign exchange student who was from India, and he lived with me we lived in this house for like a couple months. He was constantly getting out. I was like, don't do it. And I would like run out with him every once in a while. And so it was kind of fun. I got to take it. The wildlife was.
Was he fun? He sounds like a fun kid.
He's still fun. He still travels all over the place too. I see him on Facebook just taking photos.
So cool.
Yeah. So he was my avatar. He was always getting out and doing things. And I was like eventually tagged along with him. But outside my family, that's where there's like my great grandparents, my great grandfather who famously gave a lot of like land in West Virginia away to all these random women.
To raise families?
I have no idea, but he gave away. He was
families?
Creating
problems for you. Sorry.
I have no idea. Yeah, now here comes the other tear on my mom's face. I have no idea what that would, but there was a lot of drinking there. There was a lot of drinking. I call it like hints and flourishes. You'll see it every so often, like an aunt or an uncle or a great uncle or some, it's just all over the place, but nobody has like that, you're an alcoholic sort of thing. But, I hear about it every once in a while where you'll be like, man, your grandmother used to drink a lot. So you're just like, is it just a generational thing where it's like, that wasn't alcoholism, that was just the time? I don't know, but
well, now we call it alcohol use disorder.
Yeah, we have a thing. We have an AUD. We have a whole description for it. So. Yeah,
I think the term alcoholism is actually starting to fade away, which I think is a little bit weird. It's a little weird for me.
Yeah, in fact, that's pretty new to me too, because I've said that before, and somebody corrected me recently too, and I'm like, I think I'm just going to stick with alcoholic.
Yeah, because you say alcoholic, and everybody's on board. We all kind
of exactly. Yeah, they know exactly what it is.
Alcohol use disorder. What the fuck is that? Very too vague for me. I need some guidelines.
Yeah, how much use are we talking about? So
yeah, okay. So it sounds like you have really nice parents.
Yes.
They were very busy. Did you feel this busyness? Did you feel like, were you like the invisible children? And were they?
No, not at all. I don't feel like
good relationships with mom and dad.
Yeah, almost to a fault. It's just like, for example, coming up here this weekend was strictly because I wanted to just help my mom out around the house, that sort of thing. So if we didn't have that strong relationship, I wouldn't, have driven up here and shown off these curtains that are behind me to you. So.
You're so funny. Those are amazing curtains. But that's so sweet that you're helping out your mom. You mentioned your dad is your dad not well, or is he?
Yeah, so my dad his health is failing pretty rapidly. He was diagnosed with dementia in November.
Wow.
And we knew something was up like for an entire year before that. My sister lives just a few minutes from here, and she's been the one that's really had to deal with it because I'm 2 hours south in Columbus. But but it's just become, he's gone from this vibrant, vital, well-built man, like, just constantly, very articulate, very intelligent, to the shell of himself, because he's just like, he'll stare out a window for hours. And it's just, so helping my mom here is just more or less coming here.
I'm so sorry, Paul. That's so hard to watch.
Yeah, it really is. But it's helpful to be here, just for my mom's sake, just like so she has someone to talk to, because I can't imagine.
Oh, she's alone.
Yeah, I mean, because I'm thinking, like, if that was me, I'd be drinking again, because I'd just be, I don't know how I would process this. So
yeah. Oh, I'm so sorry to hear. That's really hard. I have an older parent too. He's 83 and he's got all kinds of. He's got AFib, Parkinson's.
Oh my God.
Yeah, he's COPD. He was a smoker, but he quit smoking just before I got sober. So
yeah.
But it's hard. It's, at our age, when you have older parents, it is hard. That's a thing, right? You have to watch your parents age.
I just thought this was stuff other people had to deal with. I didn't think that this would be the sort of thing that I'd ever have to face in my life. Like and it's the longest thing ever. It's just like, it's just going on. It's not sudden, and I'm sorry for you too, because they have to deal with that. I mean, to see that, and see somebody's transformation. But yeah,
but it's something we all have to deal with. And how has it affected your sobriety? How are you managing your emotions around that?
Oh, that's a good question. I
think you mentioned Fritos.
I'm sorry, what was that?
I think you mentioned Fritos.
Yeah. I had a box, or had a bag of Fritos right before the first time we did this. It was a bag of Fritos, and I eat more than I should. I will. My wife finds wrappers around the house and stuff like that. So I am not very good at it. So, but yeah, there's a lot of work stress. There's a lot, because now that I'm sober, I have to deal with feeling things, which everybody, you're not used to.
The feelings.
No one prepares you for that. Nobody prepares you for being, having to find other ways to cope with things, because it's like, oh my God, this is like real life I'm living. And so, whereas I would love to be exercising, and I would love to be, I like the idea of it, I never will. Just like it. So
yeah, I feel your pain.
Yeah.
So, okay. So let's see. So you grow up with parents who are entrepreneurs, very busy.
Yeah.
You have a younger sister. And then when did drinking come into play? When did you start drinking?
Yeah. So I had my first drink in a closet during a Christmas party at my parents' place, right there. It was a closet, and I had two Zimas.
Oh my God, I haven't heard that.
I stole Zima from the closet.
Is that still a thing?
Brought it upstairs.
Do they
it
still
just came back. It just came back like a year ago.
Wow.
And at least here in Ohio, and you talk about like, what the hell is going on? I can walk through a liquor aisle or a wine aisle or a beer aisle just fine. But something about seeing that box with the blue label and everything, you're just like instantly transported back to this person who was sitting in a closet. But if you think about it, my first drinks, I was like, I think it was 14, 15, and I was sitting in the closet. But I knew that I knew that it wasn't just going to be one. I took two. I had the presence of mind to take two drinks with me up into that closet. It's just like, I knew that one was, it's just
one
like,
is good, two is better.
Well, it's like a whole can of Pringles at that time. It's just like, I'm going to eat the whole thing. I'm not just going to take like a couple. I'm taking the whole goddamn thing. Right, exactly. I knew what I'm getting into. So, and then I didn't really get after it too much. I snuck out of the house every once in a while with our foreign exchange.
What was his name?
Chiku, which is
Chiku. That's a great name.
It is great. He and I used to sneak out and go to like bonfires and stuff. But he would
was a bad influence on you.
He really was. I hope he's listening to this. But he was like, we got to go to, so we got to go to Stacy's house. I'm like, all right. So you got fun. He goes, well, I don't have a ride there. So we drive, and, I would literally be his agent, like driving him these places. But
you were his driver.
Yeah. Yeah. And then I think early in college, I still wasn't drinking much. I wasn't drinking until I think my junior or senior year. That's when it really kicked in, because and it wasn't like the alcoholic drinking on the Thursday nights with all your friends. It was the alcoholic drinking, like, we have beer left over from the weekend that I'm going to sneak into my room on Monday and drink. And I remember thinking, there's a problem here if I'm like hiding it from my two college roommates who are sneaking into my room and like putting it, in my pants and like walking,
Why did you feel the need to sneak it?
I've always felt the need to hide things. I've always felt the need to keep secrets, to I don't know what it is about me and wanting to hide things from people. That was a big one though. It was like, immediately I knew that I had to do this because I knew that I was going to get some level of, we're going to have to talk about this, or somebody's going to notice it. Even if it was like, hey man, don't drink that, drink this, because my roommates wouldn't have been like, we're going to have an intervention. They would have just been like, what are you doing? That's
what are you doing, dude? Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Monday morning.
Yeah. And then it went from there, and then it gets darker and darker. So that's where it started. Yeah.
That's where it started. And so it doesn't sound like you had a lot of consequences in the beginning, so you were able to hide it. But at some point, it's like you can hide what you're drinking, but you can't hide your behavior. So when did you start having some consequences?
Yeah, I think it was like fun with problems and then problems. And I think my problems phase probably kicked in when I was in grad school, and I was out, I was pretending to get a degree at Arizona State University. Yeah.
You don't really go to school there, right? Isn't that just a partying school?
Well, yeah. So I went out there to get a degree in English Lit, and I did. I did get the degree.
Oh, you did? Okay. Phew.
I did, but it should tell you a lot about how hard it is to get an English degree at Arizona State. It was like, I went out there and it was a 3-year vacation for me. And I was out there and it was nonstop drinking. When I moved back home, let's just say I was at a 10 or an 11, drinking wise when I moved back, because I couldn't sustain that.
Yeah.
I literally abandoned so many friendships and people. I just left overnight. I remember I left.
Oh, you did? Why?
I knew I had a problem. And so I remember I was like, I was drinking so much. I was missing so much work that my job was in jeopardy at that point. I had a job while I was going to school. It was a good job too. And I was like, I know that I'm going to lose this job. My parents came out to celebrate my graduation. I drank so much that night. I left. I remember my parents were at a hotel and I left them the longest message. I drove to their hotel, left a handwritten note to them saying, I miss you so much. Thank you. Love you, blah, blah, blah. And I'm thinking like, who does this? It's just like, but an alcoholic writer. But then I go back, and then my dad flew back. They flew back the next day. And my dad flew back 2 days later to drive a U-Haul from Phoenix to Ohio. When I got here, my friends threw me a welcome back party, and I got a DUI that night. It was
shoot. The night you got back? You survived Arizona?
5 days, I think. I'd been here like 5 days, and I survived 3 years, and I got back to Ohio and got a DUI. And that's one thing. Yeah, it was. Oh, shoot. Welcome back.
Welcome back. Clink, clink. The handcuffs.
Exactly.
Shit, that's awful.
Exactly. Yeah, that's when the consequences really started kicking in.
How did your parents respond to that DUI?
Oh, Jesus. I was part of the reason I got that DUI was because I didn't want to call my mom or my dad for a ride, because I just knew that I didn't want them to know that I was drinking that much. And I thought, if I can just drive home, I think my life was not put together to the point where when I moved back to Ohio, I had an apartment. I was living here. So, and so I moved back home with my parents, and I didn't want to bother them. Then I remember telling them was one of the top 5 hardest things I've still ever done in my life, because that morning I had to tell them, because I got arrested at like 1 a.m, had been processed, and my friend bailed me out, who had been drinking too. He still bailed me out. And I got home at like 6 and they were still asleep. I walked in the door and I told them, and I remember it was just this silence in their room, just like this. And the whole day they were just silent to me. It was it wasn't like they were mad. It wasn't like
oh, that's worse. It was the quiet disappointment.
A couple of days later, my dad I think it was my mom may have said something along the lines of like, well, we knew this was coming. It was like something along those lines. Like, we knew
see it.
They knew this was going to happen. Yeah.
I thought you were hiding things.
I was going out a lot.
Maybe you were hiding it as well.
Well, and I remember my mom at one point was trying to help me, like after I had gone to an alcohol treatment program. it was like, I shouldn't say treatment program. I went for like one of those, narrowly avoided jail by going to one of these programs that you have to go to for a little while and, go like spend a weekend in a hotel. And I don't know if you have that in San Jose, but we had something.
It's been a while since I got in trouble.
Yeah, so I did that. Spent the night with a couple strangers. It was an odd experience, and then I had to go see a counselor for a couple weeks. But I remember during that time, my mom was like, "I'm really going to try to help you get your life together." So she was going through all my bills. So this time I had all these paper bills saved up, and she went through, and they were just literal transcriptions of just alcoholic adventures.
God.
She's like, "What's this place? And what's this place? And what's this place?" I'm like, "They're just bar. It's just like, it's so sad. And ATM withdrawals. It was just so sad." But
it was so sad. That's very expensive.
Yeah.
So your parents were observing the behavior of you going out. Were you thinking that you were hiding it or keeping it together? Or how were you justifying that? Do you think I was just a young man?
Yeah. I think it was. Just basically like, well, everybody else around me is doing this. In fact, when you're in Ohio at the time, this wouldn't have been that long ago, 15 years ago, something like that, almost 20 years ago. Almost all the friends I had gotten DUIs too. It's just like, so
it was normal.
It was normal to me. It's just like, oh, you got hit. Oh, so did I. Who was your judge? Like who was the arresting officer? That's the thing. Like, I know that person. Did you get Judge O'Brien? Oh my, yeah. It was like that sort of thing. And you're just thinking, this is a distant part of me thought this is wrong. But it was, I think I thought I was hiding it a lot more, but I just justified it as I'm in my 20s, I'm going to party. So
and so how did you get into that? If I just back up a tiny bit, how did you get into that program where you had to, like, what precipitated that?
I didn't get into it willingly, I'll tell you that. So it was, I got the DUI, and then they had sentenced me to a week in jail or something, and the lawyer got it knocked down to something ridiculous. I don't know what legal. It was something like reckless op at the end, and I'm thinking, no, I had trouble walking the line. Like I had trouble. I actively blew into a breathalyzer and had like point. I can't even tell you the name. I'd just be making it up. It'd be like 0.1 something. So it was bad, but it was 0.19 or something. But so when I went to that treatment, so it was the first taste of sobriety I ever got. Like, these are people who are just like me. They were all in a hotel together. They all, and the stories that I was starting to hear were all my stories. And I'm thinking, there's like 40 or 50 of us in a hotel room or hotel, conference room. But you're also doing the math on this. You're like, they're doing this every weekend. How many people are there out there like me? So, but afterwards I was, there was a good week where the whole week, like this where I didn't drink, and I was so proud of myself. I was like, I'm just not going to drink like 7 days, and
long 7 days.
Yeah, it was, but I thought that, there was something there. It was a lot of value. And I still think about, that was my very first taste of sobriety. Yeah.
Did you have any awareness about, like, what was your idea of an alcoholic before you had that experience?
I knew that there's a difference between heavy drinkers, which, on holidays, like that was my biggest thing. But alcoholics were a different breed. Those were people who were, my understanding of an alcoholic was somebody who was constantly at the bar, constantly running into trouble with the law, constantly, destitute, having health problems. I had literally no idea that they could be someone who's got their life ostensibly put together. And it looks, like mine, where like I said, I have 3 kids now, and I have a professional job. I had children, a professional job. I had all this. Wow. I was showing up to work. I had no idea that there were people. I just thought that once you're an alcoholic, you have that written all over you, and you're just
like you're homeless and
you're a hobo. You're like a bindle.
With the little nap thing tied to
a little bindle stick over your shoulder, just hopping around.
That's an alcoholic. Yeah.
That's
Which is why it's important for people like us to come out of the shadows and be like, hey, here, this is what it looks like, right?
Right, exactly.
Yeah, that's interesting. Okay, so you grew up and get married, and you have 3 kids. So how does alcohol, there must have been like a theme of drinking through this whole time, right?
Yeah, so in the same way that I just admitted to you that I ate like an entire bag of Fritos before this, I would cope with stress with alcohol, obviously, and it would just be mostly beer. I wasn't doing like I wasn't having a lot of hard liquor, but with my kids, when my oldest was less than a year old, I was a stay-at-home dad, and I was constantly drinking for that. That's how I got through the day. And, that's how I got through the diaper changes. That's how I got through all that. So, and I wasn't a stay-at-home dad by choice, by the way. I was a stay-at-home dad because I started to drink to the point where I couldn't hold a job. So I was so I didn't get fired. I actually quit.
You quit before you got fired?
Yeah. It's kind of like,
preemptive strike.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So, but I was drinking a lot and, I just remember setting him, Elliot, my oldest, he's 10 now, but at the time, putting him into his little bouncy seat in front of like PBS Kids and just letting that go on for like an hour and a half while I was like trying to sleep off a hangover from the night before. But it was beer, it was wine, and then it was just this, vodka eventually, but it was, I needed that sort of insulation against, the stress of being around children. So
yeah, no, I totally understand. It's hard. I mean, and then there's the whole parent guilt that comes with that, which sort of compounds the whole issue.
Yeah, that's a really good way of putting it too. I mean,
yeah. It's that negative spiral. It's like you feel like shit about yourself, and so you cope with the stress by drinking, and then you have a hangover, and then you feel bad, and it's like, oh well, I'll just drink some more. But it's been some time now. You've been sober for 4 years, and I'm dying to hear about how you got into the rooms. But I've noticed that people with alcoholism and drug addiction, there's typically like something that happens either in childhood or that you suppress and then comes out later. Did you have experience? Like, what was your compulsion about? Why do you feel like you needed to drink or hide, or what was going on?
If I'm being completely honest, I felt like I was owed something in life where I was going to be a very, very special person. Like I was going to be I was going to, not a celebrity or something. I would say like, I knew that I was going to be a person of importance. I knew that I knew this deep in myself. I knew that this was going to be
destined for greatness.
Yeah, exactly. I feel like, I don't know where I got it. It's not like my parents were constantly telling me I was amazing or something. I just felt like that though. I was, I wrote a lot when I was younger and I was really good at it.
Did.
So, and I think I was winning a lot of like writing awards and things. So somehow my brain, it was equated, but when I got into a success, but when I got older, I realized there's a giant void inside me where it was like, where is this success? And I started like, where's this great screenplay that I was, supposed to have written? Where's my, book deal? Where is my, and that's, I think, the big thing is like, I was just constantly being told that, or I was constantly believing that I was special and constantly believing that I was destined for something greater than what I had. My parents had this company that, was kind of a, big deal here in the small town I'm at, so yeah, I mean, you got to think it's a small town of 1,000 people, yet they're the big, one of the biggest employers. And you're thinking the entire time, like, well, I've got to live up to that. And that's going to be me at some point. So yeah, I really think that that's the biggest thing. I mean, it wasn't like any sort of, I don't have abuse in my past. I don't have a parent who's telling me I can't do this or
no trauma or abuse.
Quite the opposite. Whereas you could do all of these things, you could be all of these things, you could be an amazing person, and I just went the other direction. And that's I don't know. Alcohol made me feel like I was capable of those things. It made me feel like, I feel like a 2 right now because I'm not reaching my potential, but this bell of vodka will get me to 6. So.
Oh, yeah. I would imagine it would be difficult sort of living under that shadow of such success. Your parents are like incredibly successful entrepreneurs and, on the global stage where global attention, and I would imagine it would be hard to sort of like
oh, okay, I'm supposed to be doing this too. And then, not feeling like you're living up in some way.
God, yeah. I mean, you're very insightful. That's a big thing too, because I compared my life and my milestones to my parents. Like at this age, they were doing this, and I'm at this age and I'm not doing this. I did it all the time. We grew up, there was a point where we were pretty poor. I mean, I grew up in a trailer park, and we, for a couple years, and my dad just worked tirelessly he had like 2 or 3 jobs at one point, we'll say 2.5 jobs while my mom was working at home, staying home. And then, they had this company, but you're exactly right. Because, in the 90s, my parents it worked. I mean, this company worked, and I'm looking back, thinking, well, at age 30 or 33, my parents had, X, Y, and Z, and they were, they had this car and they had this, and I'm thinking, I've got none of this. So.
Oh yeah. Feeling like, they say that comparison is the thief of joy,
That's
like
a great way of putting it.
Yeah. So any accomplishments that you could have felt good about with the writing and things like that were tied to, but it's not as good as that.
Yeah. And it wasn't lucrative. I mean, writing is not a lucrative thing, right? It's not, it's not like, it's not one of these things. It's not one of these things where I write and I go, I'm going to get, you read these, I read, trade magazines a lot, like the Hollywood Reporter or something, and I'm just constantly looking for like updates of like a new James Bond movie at this point. But I'm like, this person got like a $500,000 advance or something. You're like, wait, what, for writing? Just like, and I'm just like, but that, then I start getting, at first it's like not depression, but you're just like angry. You're just like, well, how does it? And then I get past that, then I'm like, sad, like. Like, why was this valued? But then, so writing was never something that was going to get me to a certain level of success, I don't think.
Yeah, but you know what? I totally understand that feeling of, wanting to achieve a goal and then being frustrated that you're not, like, that's been a reoccurring theme in my own life. And it does make you go on that sort of roller coaster. It's like, there's like that, like you talked about, like the frustration, like your struggle and frustration, and then anger and disappointment. And then at the end, it's sort of like resignation and surrender and acceptance.
Yeah, but it's all in like the span of 60 seconds too.
That's brutal.
I have a real fast.
You cycle quickly.
Yeah. I've gotten better over the years.
Yeah, maybe just stuff that shit. Nobody needs. You don't actually need to feel that, right? That's not important. Yeah. So that could be really tricky. So I get that. That's hard.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I don't know about you, but like I didn't grow up with a lot of coping skills. Like all my coping skills I learned once I got sober. So was that? Okay, let me just take a step back, because I'm dying to know how you got to Alcoholics Anonymous. How did you get to a 12-step program?
Well, you're absolutely right with the zero coping skills thing. I mean, I'm the same way you are, where I had no coping skills for anything. I mean, like, I was, I feel like I was born without a layer of skin, where people's words would really bother me, so I'm so happy you're agreeing with me, because I would be, I'm a super sensitive person, or I'm better at it now, but I used to be, anybody who said something negative about me, I'd work in overdrive to prove them wrong.
Yeah.
Right. But I had no coping skills for it. It would keep me awake at night. Why doesn't that person like me? Or what? Or did I upset that person?
What did I do? Or what could I have said? Or
Exactly. I have no coping skills. It's no one's fault. It's just I just have none. And here's a great example, is I see it in my son a lot. When we took him to camp and he was instantly sad that we were about to leave, he had this look on his face of just not being prepared. And that look crushed me, because I was like, that's me. That's that look on his face, that grimace where he's trying to be strong, but he's not. He's 10 years old. I knew exactly how he was feeling a couple weeks ago, because I still feel that way. Coping skills, though, in terms of Alcoholics Anonymous, I had tried getting sober a number of times. I actually went to rehab. I went to rehab for a total of 7 days. I convinced them that all I needed was the detox. Got out. 2 weeks later, relapsed, started drinking again, but convinced everybody else around me that I wasn't. I was telling, And so I went to rehab, told everybody on the planet that I went to rehab because I was like, I thought, let's get it out there. Let's make sure everybody knows, look at this great achievement that Paul has accomplished. And I told everybody, and then I drank for about 4 months. And I remember my mother-in-law came to the house. She was painting the house. She was literally painting the house because I couldn't be bothered to paint the inside of her house.
You're busy.
I had a lot of drinking going on.
Yeah.
And so she came over and she was like, "Are you drinking again?" And I said, and I just told her yes. And I just followed her around the house like as she painted her house like a dog. And she was like, so she was the one that said, "Well, maybe you should try like going to a meeting or something." I'm like, "I'm not going to a meeting." It's like,
didn't they tell you to do that in rehab?
They did, and it was like I'm really good at saying I'm going to do something and not doing it. And I'm really good at my friend always says he could get an A+ in rehab, and I could have done the same thing. Didn't do one meeting when I got out, but I went. I set foot in my first meeting by myself, sat in the back row, listened to what they had to say. Really tried to listen for every possible difference to convince me that I wasn't an alcoholic. Because a friend of mine
even though you couldn't stop drinking.
Yeah, I just kept thinking, this is just, these are alcoholics, but I need to drink because I've got these problems or I've got these feelings that I need to push down, and I'm different. I'm different than you. Mm-hmm. And I would think that a friend of mine, it says that you don't go to a PTA meeting to find out if you have children. The same way, So
that is so good.
The same thing about AA meetings. You shouldn't go there to find out if you're an alcoholic. You probably are. So
yeah. So you mentioned, if you had these feelings, like you don't have these feelings that I have. So can you give it up? Tell me, what were you feeling?
Yeah, I have a lot of despair. I had a lot of it comes from what I was telling you about before, where I just feel like I am less than. Like, I feel like if you felt as unaccomplished as me, then you would drink as much as me. If you knew what it was like to not be prepared to have children as me, because I felt like everybody, then you would drink as much as me. If you were not as prepared to be married as me, you drink as much as me. That kind of stuff.
Sounds like you have such high standards. Do you feel like you suffer from perfectionism? Is it?
Yeah, I do, but I do not as much as I used to, because I think I'm a little easier on myself now. I've loosened the strings on my life a little bit, but yeah, it was a big thing. Like, oh my God, I sent an email out and I missed a word. That would keep me awake for like I would obsess about it.
Right.
That kind of stuff. So yeah, I'm definitely a perfectionist. Yeah.
Yeah. And that the whole, I see a reoccurring theme. It's like the sneaking and the, it's like this, don't see me, like, don't see me. Yeah.
Yeah. You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
I was telling our mutual friend, Anna, I was telling her that I have this thing, and I hear about it in the rooms every once in a while. It's like, don't, I want to be noticed. I want to be seen. But the minute somebody starts looking at me or paying attention, don't look at me. It's just like, I don't want you noticing me. It's like this chat right now where, everyone else is just hearing it, but you're getting to see me. I'm like, don't look at me. It's just like,
you're all, sorry, am I making you're squirming? Am I
no,
making
no, I just have that whole thing with, yeah, absolutely. With drinking, it's always been, I've always had that need to fill this despair, this hole, or compare this in me.
Which
always.
Is so common, right? I mean, that's my, and I know about this because I suffer from image management. My sponsor calls it image management, where I'm trying to manage how people see me.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
Isn't that good? I just love that. And she's so sweet because she will say things like, I do see you. And this is a theme that's sort of been isn't that sweet?
Yeah, that is. I like that a lot.
Yeah. And she hears me. And I remember my first sponsor that I ever got, she said that she'd be honored to listen to my inventory. That's how I asked her if she would be my sponsor. Isn't that sweet?
Oh,
And,
really? Wow.
Yeah. And she was like, oh, I'd be honored to listen to your inventory, but we're going to start with step one. Bitch. But anyway, but it was kind of funny because I could see it in her eyes that she got my kind of crazy, and my crazy was met with love and empathy. And that was the experience of feeling heard and accepted. And I could stop telling everything to everyone.
God, that's so great. That's so I wish I would have had that, because it's just like, I just assumed that
we get it when we get it, right?
Right. That first month where I was one meeting away from not coming back. I was just like, I'm done. And my sponsor, still my sponsor, showed up and gave me that exact sort of love. And I love that phrase, like, I see you, I just, that's, I hesitate to use the word breathtaking, but it is, because it's just,
I feel like, I needed someone to, and especially, and here's a little side note, is that in arguments, people want to know that that you see me, you hear me, you respect me, and that you still love me,
Right.
And if one of and I've been married a long time, and I just know that, and we don't, in the beginning, you have to work a lot of shit out, right? But I know that, it's like over time, it's like if one of us is just sane enough to disengage long enough to just stop and go, what is it that you need me to hear? And just be quiet, not think about what I'm going to say next, but really just take it in. Is this what you're trying to tell me? And then meet that with love and empathy. And it's amazing how the conversation changes completely, right? That it's just energy, just the level comes right down.
Yeah, you're reminding me that I really need to start applying the principles I've learned in the rooms to my actual life outside, because I'm not good at that either. I'm really good at doing it with recovery. All my recovery life, as I'll call it, but I'm not really good with my actual life, where I'm not really good at listening to my wife. I'm not really good at listening to my parents and their needs, and meeting them with the love and empathy they need as well. But
well, Paul, I bet you're a lot better than you used to be.
Well, I used to be a placeholder of a human being, so I was like, so now I'm actually present. So
well, so the only time you get to do comparison, this is what I was told, the only time we get to do comparison is to ourselves, to where we used to be, right? So you hope you're just not hard on you can recognize that it's important to recognize the progress too, right?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely do, and I'm not making light of the fact that I've come a long way. I just don't go back and go, wow, I'm such an amazing person now. I go oh my God, I'm so great. Yeah. Now it's more or less, I'm not a human wrecking ball. Now I'm a human being. So,
progress. It's so important to recognize the progress.
Absolutely.
Okay. So you still have the same sponsor.
I do. I'm very fortunate. He came out of the blue, and I couldn't love the man more. So,
how did you pick him, or did he pick you, or how did that work?
I didn't pick him. He picked me. I was never going to ask somebody to prom, right? So
just sit here quietly and suffer.
Yeah,
don't mind.
I mean, I never was, and I was sitting there. We were talking. Somebody in the room was saying something along the lines of grief, and they were saying, how am I going to get through the death of my mother, I think. And they said something about, I feel like, I don't know how I'm going to deal with that. They were in early sobriety too. Came to me about 3 people later. And I remember, God, by the way, side note, I have such anxiety when the topic goes around the room and I know it's coming to me. My heart starts beating a mile a minute. So this is the first time I had actually really ever had to speak because I ventured into the front circle. So I was like, I'm going to, I'm not going to do it.
The back circle you don't have to speak, and you vent in the inner circle you do have to speak. Is that
the back circle doesn't get picked on that much. I'll put it that way. So it does, because it usually starts with it's a little different.
I thought it was a weird. I thought it was a. I mean, not weird. That sounds judgy, but I thought that was a rule.
All I know is that when I was sitting in the main circle, all eyes were on me when they came to that topic, and so I said, I don't know about anybody else right now, but I feel like I'm in mourning right now because I've lost my friend alcohol. I've lost.
Oh, for sure.
I felt like I was grieving. I felt like I had literally lost something.
Yes.
Like there was a real death in my life. And so I brought that up, and this gentleman came over to me, and I'd seen him in the meetings for, first, 3 or 4 meetings that I've been to. He came over and said, and he wasn't angling for a sponsor, by the way. He wasn't like, our sponsee. He wasn't angling for, to come, to mentor somebody. He just came over and said, I haven't thought of that in a decade. I haven't thought of that, and you reminded me of that. I just wanted to thank you. And that's all. It was not this whole, hey, let's get together, or you work in a program, or you doing any of that. It was so organic, which is important to me, because all of my relationships in recovery have been organic. They haven't been forced. And that was just the biggest thing for me. So we started talking, and, one thing led to another, and he and I eventually did go to prom, but metaphorically. So, but yeah. So, but we, he's been just amazing. I mean, you think like the picture perfect version of like a sponsor for me is him. And just amazing, just an amazing person.
So that's really interesting, because like you were so authentic and so willing to reveal who you really were by saying, I am mourning my best friend, alcohol. And he connected to, I feel like it's that connection. Like you literally attracted him to you because he connected with that feeling of, oh my God, I haven't thought about that in so long. And like, when you said that, I was like, that's right. Alcohol and weed, those are like my 2 best friends. We were like, and mourning is a thing.
I haven't thought of it, to be honest. I haven't really thought of that feeling in a long time either. I had to, that's why I love going to meetings, and that's why I love hearing people who are, just entering the room, because you're like, oh my God, I completely forgot what that was like, like 4 years ago. It's not that long. I don't have as much sobriety as you, but I have as much, to remind me that I'm far enough away from a drink to go, good Lord, I forgot all about that feeling.
Oh yeah. I mean, I do not think I'm immune, for sure. Right. It's like, it seriously is one day at a time, and I do love, and there's something about, I was listening to like a Oprah Super Soul Sunday, and this guy was explaining why we have broken hearts. It's like we spend so much time building up these guards around our hearts that, that sometimes our hearts are broken, but it's important because that's when like the poison can get out.
Oh yeah.
And I was like, oh, for sure. And that's when I'm raw like that, or when I'm feeling something like that, I am suddenly like so much more relatable. Like something happened the other day, and I, stood up at a meeting and was like in tears, and I don't do that. That's not my get down, but, some shit happened, and I caught a feeling, and I had to share it. And, I was like, people just came to me and I was like, because they're connecting. Like they get it. Like we get each other. And it was just so important to connect.
It's not for show either. That's the best part, right? It's not for, because if that happened at work, like this group hug, be like, oh, you're just doing this because you have to. Like, these are genuine people. These are real feelings. And they're just, they really are drawn and attracted because they understand.
Yeah. And tell me this, I don't know about you, but we have like a BS detector. Like I can sniff that shit out in 2 seconds. I can tell the difference. Can you?
Oh God. Yeah. I mean, I can tell in the same way I can tell an alcoholic, like I can see another one in a room. I'm like how a fisherman knows another fisherman. I'm like, I know that he's an alcoholic.
I got you.
Yeah. I know. I have a high degree of, I wouldn't say emotional intelligence, but I can tell real quick when somebody's faking, like, oh, come here, pulling me in for a hug or something. I'm like, you are just doing this just for the sake of checking a box. Like, but yeah.
Yeah. Right.
I've never felt that way in a room though. I've never felt that way in a room.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. Do you continue to go to meetings, or what do you do to maintain your sobriety today?
That's a great question. And I'm actually embarrassed to say I haven't been to a meeting recently. I know. I'm going back to my home group, which is, I'm great. I have a lot of great friends there. What I do to maintain my sobriety is constantly in contact with my sponsor. I'm constantly doing recovery work. Like I feel like I'm always doing it any hour of the day at some sort of 12-step work where I'm, working on an article for the Fix After Party, Genius Recovery, all these sites. I'm doing, with the book and the podcast and all this stuff. I'm doing some element that's like keeping me sober. But I really feel I get decentered when I don't go to a meeting. I've never left a meeting feeling worse than when I went in. I'm sure that's a familiar refrain with most people, but I need to feel that again because it's been a couple weeks, and I feel a little dislocated right now.
Yeah, so. I do feel off if I go any stretch without. What's interesting though is that what is crazy is people used to get sober over the mail, like through letters. Yeah. Like back in the day, when people were, the reason for anonymity at the beginning was because people who acknowledged that they were in recovery were overwhelmed. Like it's in the book and in our literature, in Alcoholics Anonymous literature, that if they would be overwhelmed with requests for help. Like there was too few. There were too few people to handle all the inquiries for help. And that's why it's one of the reasons.
I had no idea.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons why they instituted anonymity. And employment opportunities. They didn't want to say that they were alcoholic because they felt it would limit their job opportunity potential.
Oh, I had no idea.
Yeah, it's pretty wild.
Wow.
Yeah, so that's kind of why I, buck the anonymity tradition of maintaining, anonymity at the level of press, radio, and film, because listen, we're already out there. The media has outed everybody anyway. So I think there needs to be good examples.
I'll maintain your sobriety. I don't really care about, I'll maintain your anonymity. I don't care about mine because
I won't bust anybody else.
Yeah, I care about that part. But the thing is it was important for me to, at first, I'm not going to lie, it was important for me to tell everybody I was in, recovery, because if I told everybody, there was no escaping. There was
accountability.
There was no way I could get a drink. There was no way I could, and if I just told everybody, scorch the earth and told everybody.
Scorch the earth.
That way.
I don't think anybody was surprised.
I think everybody was basically like, well, no shit. You were
the last to know. Yeah.
Right. So when I told everybody I was in recovery and they were like, no surprise. It was important for me following that to make good use of it, because then it was like everybody who does, who wants a good example of somebody who's most people at work, for example, who don't know what an alcoholic looks like now does, because I've made everybody in my work knows I'm in recovery. They know that.
Oh,
so
wow.
now
that's very cool.
So yeah. So, it's important to me. I feel safe and secure in that, but it's important for me to maintain that.
That's very cool. And tell me a little bit about your book. I want to make sure that people know about your book and buy it, and I'll put links in the show notes to, like, you can buy it on Amazon, I would imagine.
Well, I will say before I tell you, yes, you can. Before I tell you anything about the book, I will say that I was having such a good time, I forgot why I was on here. So it's like, thank you so much for a great time. The book is called Bottleneck, and it's available on Amazon and some stores. It took me 4 years to write. I started writing it about 6 months into sobriety. The reason I started writing it wasn't because I thought that my story was unique in any sort of way. It wasn't because I thought, well, I've got a story to tell. I've got like this, you guys think you have a story, listen to mine. It was because I couldn't find a story like mine anywhere outside the AA rooms. All the books that existed were about, especially all the addiction memoirs, had very little to do strictly with alcohol. I wasn't a pill popper. Not really, no. No, especially not that. They gave me like, I either got sleepy on that, or I got paranoid, or it just wasn't a thing for me.
You just didn't try hard enough.
Yeah.
I'm kidding.
Yeah, it was just, and I've been,
just alcohol. Okay.
Yeah, and I've been disabused of saying that too, because when I was in rehab, somebody kept saying like, "Stop saying just alcohol," but I was in there. But really, I don't know a lot of just alcoholics. I know people who are struggling with a number of different addictions, but I could not find a book that had to do with somebody who was just had a fucking normal life and just had like, a wife, a job, kids, and just, had this alcohol problem where they're hiding bottles around the house, not, this constant headwind of a hangover. And just all the time, and I couldn't find that story. So I felt almost compelled in some sort of way to put it out there and say like, look, this is, there's no element of like the opioid addiction or the epidemic in this. There's no element of any other drug. It's really just what happens when your life, the wheels come off with alcohol. And it took me 4 full years to write the book.
That must have been such a cathartic process of pulling all that out.
Yeah, it was cathartic. It was also very hard on the people around me because it was, my wife, for example, would read certain things in the book, and I would be like, here's the main, because she read I don't know how many versions of this thing, and then some of my friends would, but it was very hard for her to start putting missing puzzle pieces into place. And so she would read about, she used to work night shift, and there was a time when I left and I was out of wine, and my brain was like, my kid's going to be just fine in this crib while I go to Kroger and get wine, and I left and went to the store and didn't think twice about it, came back. I was like, oh, good. My kid's still in his crib, that sort of thing. My wife had no idea, and she reads this piece, and, it's that sort of stuff.
What did she say to you? Was she really pissed?
Well, she did the thing that she does when she's really pissed, which is not say anything. So she got up a lot. Yeah, I mean, and I can only imagine what I've put my family through.
Like your parents. Your parents are like that too.
Yeah, I can't imagine what I put my family through with this book. It was cathartic for me, yes.
Did your parents read it?
My mom did. But I purposely didn't buy this book for my mom, and she bought. And by the way, I will tell you, while I've been in this interview, there was a note slipped under the door, so I'm really curious to see what the note was.
Do you want to go get it?
No, I don't want to see it yet.
I'm dying to know. No,
I'll go get it. Let's see what it says.
Okay.
Give me 1 second.
I'm dying to know.
Oh.
Is lunch is ready?
Are your listeners ready for this?
Yes.
Are you ready for this?
I am so ready. Is it like lunch is ready?
Well, I'm sitting here in this room. It says, Paul, going to mall. Dad is sleeping.
Oh. Slightly anticlimactic.
I
what did I think she was going to write? I can hear every word in my heart.
For the last 10 minutes, I'm not going to lie to you. For the last 10 minutes, I saw this note going to the door. So if you thought I was distracted a few minutes ago,
you hide it well.
Well, if anybody thought that, going really well until about 10 minutes ago, and Paul seemed really distracted and all this, it was because this note went under the door, and I was like staring at it going, what did she pick up on? I literally thought she heard something, was like, don't mention this. So
edit that out.
Yeah, she's also got really good handwriting, you can see. So she wrote like a
with a little owl note. That is so sweet.
She even put like a little heart at the bottom. So this is what I'm telling you. It's really nice. You're getting a special time with me. I'm so sorry. This has got to be the worst podcast you've ever done. I'm so sorry.
No, I've done. Oh, please. I've done interviews that I have not published.
Well, we'll see about this one.
I cannot wait to publish this one.
So my mom, I purposely did not give my mom or anybody in my family a copy of this book, because it's not like this book is so bad. It's like there's so many things like my mom is the reason I'm drinking, or my dad, nothing like that. It's just like, I don't want to put my family through certain things like this. Yeah. Have you read Sarah Hepela's book, Blackout? Have you read that book?
Oh, okay, that's on my list. There's so many really good ones, and that's the one was it good?
Yeah, tremendous book. Tremendous. I mean, she could write about. I even wrote her a quick note. I said something like, "You could write a book about dishwashing, and I would read it because it was so well done." She's just, her writing is so good. But when I got done reading that book, I was thinking, and I was midway through writing my book at the time, and I was thinking, I'm done, by the way, in no way comparing the two books. She's amazing. But I just thought after that, I was thinking, I could not imagine being her parents reading that book, going,
oh, really?
Yeah, or even like, Amy Dresner's parents. I was thinking,
oh my God, no, Amy's book. I love her. Oh my God.
Yeah.
I really hope her father never reads that.
Yeah, so I mean, I'm thinking like the same thing on a much smaller, granular level. I'm thinking like, I don't want my family reading this book. And then my mom sends me a text message like a couple weeks ago that says, "Read your book," and I was like,
"Read your book." 3 words.
But then there's like the iPhone, the dots are going through this stuff. Like, oh my God. So for literally 60 seconds, I had no idea where this was going. It was like, but I knew it was going to happen at some point. But
what did she say? Was it positive? Was she supportive? Shocked?
This is my family in a nutshell. My mom loved it. She was gave me the heart icons and the kissy face icons and all stuff. They're very proud of you. She was like, I don't remember saying this, but you do. So therefore, it must be true.
I guess it happened.
Yeah.
That's her way of disagreeing with you.
Yeah, but she's great. I mean, my family is so supportive. My wife's incredibly supportive. And everybody I know, I mean, I haven't, I've been steeling myself for a number of people to go, I didn't, this happened. And it's like when I went through the men's process, I was like, throwing those out into the world. Like I sent everybody I knew an amends I felt that I owed. And this book is like, I doubled down on that. And I keep waiting for somebody to come back and say something like, we're good, or, you didn't need to say this, or I did. So I really didn't have to change too many names in the book at all. I did like maybe 2, I think. There was a girl in a bathtub I was with. I changed her name because I don't think she wants to be associated with me in a bathtub. But I changed her name and a coworker, and that was it. So.
Very good.
Yeah.
No, that's it's so amazing. I'm at the beginning of that process, and it's just really painful. So.
Are you?
Yeah. So I'm doing Anna David's All the Right Moves class. It's like a 6-month writing process. It's where you're doing your book proposal, and I had sat down maybe a couple months ago now. It was so painful. It's like I wrote up until I was about 14 or 15, and then I had to stop.
Oh, really?
Yeah. 14 was a rough it was really rough time.
So are you actually writing the proposal, or are you doing the actual writing of the book? Because those can be
those are 2 different things. So I started writing my memoir before I agreed to do Anna's class, which is a great way of procrastinating the rest. I think as writers, it's like, the hardest thing is to just sit down and start,
Yeah, it's a whole element to that where, especially with me, with the writing that I do, it's like there's not a lot of I want to do this writing today. It's like I have to do this, and so you just do it. So with the memoir, it was, for me, it wasn't a quick process. It was
4 years, yeah.
So
did you do a proposal first and then write the book, or you just decided to write the whole thing?
No, midway through the book, I started saying there's got to be some sort of narrative here, where there's got to be like a linear narrative where I've got to go from point A to point B to, holy shit at the end. But it's like, when I go from all that. But I was just writing pieces. I was just writing, this happened. I started with when I was in rehab. I started because that was the most indelible to me at the time. And then I started writing some moments from that I remembered from really dark periods of my life. But then they started all kind of coalescing, and they started kind of interlocking with each other, and then started looking like a book. And then that process is, it was just equally torturous and rewarding, I guess. So
yeah, for sure. Well, yeah, no, I totally get that's like it's a Peace Corps, the toughest job you'll ever love. It's
I hear that, but I hear that they also say I don't like writing, but I love having written. So it's
yeah, I totally get that. Yeah. Oh, that's so good. Tell me a little bit about Drop the Needle.
Yeah, so that's a podcast I do with
bi-weekly.
It is. 2 friends of mine got together. I met a gentleman named Mike Verley in treatment, and he and I hit it off right away. I apparently make friends pretty easy. I had no.
Yeah, I can totally. I feel like we're best friends already.
Yeah. So I met him in treatment. We stayed in contact, and I have another friend outside who is not in recovery, but he's a music expert. His name's Sean Golden, and so I thought what would be interesting is doing a podcast about. There's a podcast called NPR. It's on NPR. It's called All Songs Considered, and they basically are two hosts who sit down and they just share music with each other. Well, I thought what would be kind of cool is taking that similar format and taking one central theme related to recovery. So we'll say like acceptance or grief or gratitude or something, and then we all share music that reminds us of that topic. So
I love that.
Yeah, so Mike and I are able to share the recovery aspect. Mike's got crazier stories than I do, which is great because he can go. We did the consequences episode. He was just off the charts with the stories, and then Sean will go and then we'll share the songs, and Sean will give the background about the music. And lately we've had a number of guests on the show, which has been really cool and really rewarding. Amy Dresner was a guest, just like she was on the show. Yeah, it's really cool because we're really fortunate. But it's a really fun format, I think. And as much as you can have fun talking about these things, but it's,
I know.
Yeah. And you get people who, we have a lot of listeners who aren't even in recovery, but they just hearing about new music. And that's really rewarding too.
Gosh, when you were talking about that, I just wanted to share this one song. When I first got sober, was that Enigma song, Return to Innocence?
Oh yeah, of course, yeah.
Oh my gosh, that's and it related to my recovery so well. It's like, don't be afraid to be weak, don't be too proud to be strong.
Well, I think you've just auditioned and successfully become a future guest for Drop the Needle. I think you should. Yes. I think you should be on. So let's.
Please, I would love to talk about that.
Let's get that on for real.
Yeah,
it is a great song for real.
I'll totally do it. Yeah, I love talking about my damn self.
I love it too. I love hearing more about you. Yeah, it's fantastic.
I'm tired about talking about me. How about you talk about me? I'm that person.
And let's talk about it through music. So yeah, it's gonna be great.
Awesome. I will totally do that. Well, listen, I so enjoyed my conversation with you. You are
likewise.
I adore you already.
Oh, well, thank you so much. I can't tell you how meaningful this was to me. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, I just am so blessed that I get to meet such amazing people through this, and I appreciate your story. Listen, for somebody who has the, don't look at me thing, I am so inspired by your courage to be able to just put your book out there and let people take from it what they will. Your courage to be able to say, hey, this is what 4 Years Sober looks like. This is what my story looked like. This is what just alcohol looks like in a person like me. So important. And to try to end it's like, I feel like we're fighting the good fight of trying to end the stigma of addiction. So I applaud your courage. I find it very inspiring. And thank you so much for your time today.
Oh, I appreciate it. Thank you so much. This has been great. Thank you.
Okay. We'll talk soon, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Thanks so much.
Bye-bye.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
One last thing before you go, if you enjoyed the podcast today, please don't forget to subscribe on iTunes or Stitcher and leave a review. And if you'd like to make a donation to the podcast and help me keep the lights on, you can do so by visiting odaatchat.com. There's a donation button or membership button on the right-hand side. Have a great day. Thank you so much for joining us.